This is IAQ Radio, Indoor Air Quality Radio, the voice of the indoor air quality industry, with your hosts, Radio Joe Hughes and the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick. And now, Radio Joe Hughes.
Good day and welcome to IAQ Radio Plus. This week is episode 614, and we welcome Bud Offermann in for a discussion on ventilation, filtration, and COVID snake oil salesman. We sent a copy of a little paper he put together on the snake oil along with the show announcement. Before we get started, let's thank our sponsors. They're the reason we continue doing the show. Please support our sponsors and thank them for their support of IAQ Radio.
Our marquee sponsor is Instascope at instascope.co. Our association sponsors are the American Industrial Hygiene Association at AIHA.org, the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists at ACGIH.org, the Cleaning Industry Research Institute at CIRI Science.org, the Indoor Air Quality Association at IAQA.org, the Restoration Industry Association at restorationindustry.org, the Institute for Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification at IICRC.org, and Healthy Buildings America 2021 at HB2021-America.org. Industry sponsors are AEML Laboratories at AEMLinc.com, Particles Plus at particlesplus.com, Gray Wolf Sensing Solutions at graywolfsensing.com, TSI Inc. at tsi.com, and Healthy Indoors Magazine at healthyindoors.com.
And now you can win a cool prize. It's time for the IAQ Radio Trivia question. Be the first to correctly answer. Simply email your answer to czlotnick@cs.com. Or if listening live, just text your answer from your computer. And now, here's the Z-Man.
Hello, everyone. Congratulations go out to Don Weeks, Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, who was first to identify the year 1527 as the first mention of hurricane in what is now the United States. The IAQ Radio Trivia question for today, Friday, January 29, 2021, has been sponsored by TSI Inc., an industry leader in precision instrumentation for monitoring indoor air. Learn how to expand your IAQ investigations at tsi.com. Here is today's IAQ Radio Trivia question. What ingredient in snake oil is known to have anti-inflammatory properties? Back to you, Joe.
Interesting. All right, Bud Offermann, he's the president of Indoor Environmental Engineering, a San Francisco-based IAQ consulting firm. Prior to starting up IEE, he was a staff scientist with the Building Ventilation and Indoor Air Quality Program at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. Welcome back, Bud. We've had you on twice before. Looking forward to a great show today.
Thanks very much, Joe.
Good to have you back in the saddle here. All right, so let's talk a little bit about first how do you became so interested in and knowledgeable about ventilation and filtration?
Yeah, well, I guess it all started back probably at Lawrence Berkeley Lab. I came out from Buffalo, New York in 1971, and I got a job at Lawrence Berkeley Lab with this group doing indoor air quality, and it was great. We ended up studying a lot of stuff on radon gas, and then the radon decay products. And because radon decay products, it's important whether they're attached to a particle or not attached to a particle. We started becoming aerosol scientists. And so we started studying particles and air filtration. And then I got a chance to be on 60 Minutes as a result of that research with Dan Rather. This is like 1985. And then I started consulting with the Federal Trade Commission, because back then, guys, the air cleaners they actually called them air purifiers. They were really scenting machines. Companies like Norelco, $10 little box with a fan and a citrus impregnated filter for scenting. Not so much air cleaning, but the Federal Trade Commission back then said, all right, some of these claims that they're making for health and everything, this has got to stop. So, and then the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers said, well, with this enforcement action coming from Federal Trade Commission, let's get Offermann over here and help us write a standard. So then it became the AHAM AC-1 clean air delivery rate. So that's how I got into it.
That's CADR, the clean air delivery rate. That's still used today and quite popular. The AHAM. People that buy these products should look for that. Absolutely. I have a little something later, a little history I'm going to show you when I pull up my slide deck on how this really important metric, clean air delivery rate, which is airflow times efficiency. So it's what you want to know as an engineer. If you're trying to engineer indoor air in a building, you don't want to care how efficient the filter is necessarily if there's no air going through it. Yeah. And nor do you care what the efficiency is if it's a high efficiency, no air, you got zero. If you got a high efficiency and no air, you got zero. So you need to know the two. Okay. And does ventilation and air filtration provide the same amount of airborne transmission risk reduction? All right, that's a good question. Let me share my screen here. I'm gonna share it, and it's where's my thing here? Here we are, and share. There you go. Do slideshow, play from start. Okay. So let's just go down here because I do have a few slides. Okay. So regarding your question, I got to point the viewers to this paper that the California Department of Health Services put out, their indoor air quality group. And there's the link right there. The role of building ventilation and filtration in reducing risk of airborne transmission in schools. So it was just put out this September 2020. And I've been assisting the CDPH in their COVID-19 work. So keep in mind, this is important. Okay, so we're going to, the question was, is ventilation and air cleaning, are they the same? Well, yes and no. The important thing I want to make a distinction here is that this transmission, we know airborne is a mechanism of transmission, even far long range transmission here. And that's what we're going to be talking about interrupting or protecting people from with air cleaning and filtration. We're not going to be doing anything with short range, but no matter how much air we put in, right? That we're only going to interrupt this close range transmission with masks and social distancing. And so, yes, it is the total air changes per hour, outdoor air and ventilation, plus air filtration, whether you get it from your HVAC system or portable air cleaners. But of course, it depends how efficient the filter is. All right, yeah. So a HEPA filter is 99.9% efficient on particles. So yeah, here is a chart of the different removal mechanisms for in like a classroom setting. And this is with a MERV 8 filter. So you get some removal from infiltration, not very much. Some from surface deposition, not very much. And then you get from your outdoor air ventilation and HVAC filtration a little bit more. So this is in the paper that the CDPH wrote. You can see when you go up to a MERV 13 filter, you get a lot better. It's taking a much more of the removal is happening with the filtration. All right. I just want to say a couple of things here about ventilation. Okay, so here's a book
if you ever get a chance to read it, it's quite good. It's about kids with tuberculosis or that had been exposed to, family members that had tuberculosis. And that's called an Eskimo suit. This is in Chicago, and this is the school, 1910, and they have up on the roof a structure where the kids went that had been exposed to TB or had TB. And the idea was just like sanitariums back in that era of widespread TB, knew that ventilation and sunlight and all that good was good for that disease. And so here there's these kids in their Eskimo suits. And yes, that is Snow, Cliff, and Joe, and they got their suits on. So,
wow.
So ventilation and air cleaning are pretty much can be the same, with the exception that air cleaning, it depends on the filtration efficiency. But you got to keep in mind now that the air filter industry has really matured. I mean, we now have pleated filters that are, HEPA filters, right? And so here are the different types of filtration cleaning devices you can have. The mechanical filters. This is your fibrous filter. In the old days, Joe and Cliff, when we were growing up, the furnace filter, you could see right through it. It was a panel. It really, all it did is protect the cooling coil. So it didn't foul up. But then in World War II, the Manhattan Project, developing nuclear weapons and everything, invented the HEPA filter or pleated filter. If you take a filter and pleat it and give it a lot of surface area, you can make that filter essentially 100% effective at removing particles. Then, Joe, the question is, yes, the air going through a HEPA filter produces as clean air or SARS-CoV-2 free as outdoor air. But you have to have a high efficiency filter. Now, you remember electrostatic precipitators. This was like a 1950s technology. It's pretty much out the door now, but it was used in nuclear submarines for cleaning the air, had very low pressure drop. It basically had ionizers, and then it had plates of oppositely charged plates that you would ionize the air going in, and the particles would get charged and they would get drift into the oppositely charged plates. But the plates would get dirty, and then the system really wouldn't work that well. And then you had issues with ozone. So pretty much, they're still out there, but they're pretty much kind of gone. Ionizers, this was an industry looking for a place back in the 1980s, before bipolarization and before some of these other types of ionization devices. But yeah, they didn't really work all that well. And then last, and this is kind of new, well, the UV is not new. Ultraviolet light used many, many years ago for controlling tuberculosis, airborne TB in hospital settings and everything. But let's just say that, which everyone will, I think, agree, is that it's kind of a mixed bag on UV. Upper room UV, you would usually have a soffit up on the wall so that the UV didn't have line of sight with you. But there was no fan to bring the air up to give it enough time to be disinfected by the UV light. And that remains today. UV, upper room UV, really wouldn't call it a dependable control strategy. And then UV light on a moving airstream, the virus and bacteria get maybe a little suntan, that's about it, but no real significant deactivation or cleaning. Photocatalytic oxidation came out, 15 or 20 years ago. This is where you take basically sunscreen, titanium oxide, impregnated on a filter, irradiate the filter with UV light, it creates hydroxyl radicals, which then can attack like virus, bacteria, and then also VOCs. But we'll get into that a little bit in a sec.
Okay.
Let me just take a minute of time and just say, for the mechanical filters, fibrous filters, there's some various mechanisms that work on different size particles. The first one here we'll call inertial impaction. That's where the airstream is moving across here, and the air can scoot around the fiber, but the particle can't. It's too heavy. It just collides into the particle. And when particle collides into the fiber, when fibers and particles interact, the particles are so small that they don't bounce off the fiber. They're held by molecular forces. But then there's diffusion too. If the particle is very small, it doesn't ride the streamline all that smoothly. It's erratic, and it gives it a higher probability of touching the fiber, in which case it gets removed. The nice thing about that is, look at this. Here on the y-axis, on the x-axis is the size of the particles in micrometers. Here on the filter efficiency is the y-axis. You'll see that for this inertial impaction, for the big particles, very high collection efficiency, at 1 micron and bigger. But then as the particle gets smaller, inertial effects don't work. But fortunately, and this happens in science a lot, there's another mechanism that's really good for small particles, diffusion. And when you add the two together, you get a little dip in the overall, the overall removal efficiency, and it's right around 0.3 microns. This is why when we test HEPA filters, we test them with aerosols that are around 0.3 microns. It's the most penetrating particle. But, about HEPA filters, they're 99.9997%, so that dip can be very small for a HEPA filter. Now, here's something interesting too, because I didn't know this, at least in 1985, that electrostatic devices, including electrostatic precipitators, have the same two competing mechanisms: field charging for big particles, diffusion charging for little ones, and you get the same minimum right around 0.3 microns. So yeah, and let's see if I have one more here. Okay, this is Joe, that you were asking about the portable air cleaner testing. There are two tests that you can rely on that for accurate filtration efficiency testing. One is the ASHRAE 52.2 MERV rating. Everyone's heard of MERV, I imagine. MERV 13 has become the kind of standard filter now that most codes recommend. That's simply measuring the concentration of the particles upstream and downstream in a duct. So they take a 2x2 filter, they put it in the test duct, and they measure the MERV rating. Now, portable air cleaners, you can't just put them in a test duct. So AHAM AC-1 developed this chamber method for clean air delivery rate. And the chamber test of particle removal rate, it basically put smoke into the chamber, watch how fast the smoke goes away with no air cleaner running, then put the air cleaner in the test in the chamber, watch how fast it goes away, and the difference gives you the clean air delivery rate. Now, okay,
There you go.
Credit where credit's due, right?
Yep.
Ken Whippy was a mentor of mine, although I only knew him briefly. I was a young scientist at Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, and he was nearing the end of his career. And I met him at an ASHRE meeting in Chicago, and he had developed this method for testing portable air cleaners that got around the fact that you couldn't really put it in a test duct. You put it in a room, and he did this test. It's right out of mass balance theory, and it calculates the contaminant removal rate. He never gave it a fancy name. Where was it? Here's the paper he did at ASHRAE back in 1983. It simply called it, because he was a scientist and an engineer, and he liked equations. He called it NQR. It's basically the contaminant removal efficiency times how much air is going through the device. So if you have an portable air cleaner with 200 CFM and it's got a HEPA filter, that's 200 CFM of clean air coming out. But if you have a filter that's only 50% efficient, the clean air delivery rate would be 200 times 50% is 100 CFM. So that's how that evolved. Then yours truly, I was a young scientist at Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory. I had just met Ken Whitby, and we were doing air cleaning tests, not because we were like the Consumer Reports of portable air cleaners. We were scientists studying radon and radon progeny. Or we used to call them radon daughters for a while, but it was be more politically correct. Is radon progeny. So we started testing portable air cleaners, but really what behind it was understanding the interaction of aerosols and radon decay products. And we wrote a couple papers on that. I think this will be the last slide on that thing, and we'll go back to you.
Okay.
Okay, so after we did the testing at Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory and the 60 Minutes interview with Dan Rather, the Federal Trade Commission hired me as a consultant to do some enforcement actions against some of these false advertising claims. At which point the industry rallied, and that was AHAM. And AHAM then decided, say, well, let's hire Offermann to help us with write this testing procedure, and I did. And today it is the de facto testing for portable air cleaners. So if a message is, I would say, if you're going to use air filtration, make sure if it's a HVAC filter, it has a MERV rating, right? ASHRE 52.2. And if it's a portable air cleaner, it has a CADR rating. And if it doesn't have those two things, then walk away.
Don't do it. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, in your history, and I'm looking at a text question, you may have maybe skipped over for some reason ozone generators as air cleaners. I know you've been involved with that, and there's California Air Resource Board has some rules on that. Can you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah. They're not really an air cleaner, right? But they're not legal to be used in California, at least, ozone, generators, and even air cleaning devices are regulated for the emissions of ozone. But they are widely used in the restoration industry, which IAQ radio listeners there's a lot of restoration people. So yeah, they are used for deodorization and stuff like that. Personally, my recommendations on mold remediation or any kind of biodecontamination doesn't ever involve biocides, never involves ozone. It just involves physical removal of soap and water. But yeah, I did mention it, but it is basically a restoration.
Let me ask you this, Bud. You wrote this article, Beware of the COVID-19 Snake Oil Salesman. They are here. I don't think you just wrote it because you woke up one day and decided to write an article. What kind of led you to that article? And then maybe you could tell us a little bit about the article.
Yeah. Well, I've been in this business a long time, and some of these non-traditional air cleaning devices, electrostatics and stuff like that, they've been reincarnated many, many, many times. So So I've been always calling them out for what they are. But when they started selling them to school districts, and I get it, the school districts are under enormous pressure, right?
Right.
To get, to get their schools open and stuff. And
a safe environment, right?
yeah, so there's a lot of reasons for that. But okay, we want to get kids back in school, absolutely. So that seems to be open the door for some of these snake oil kind of salesmen selling devices that promise everything, and the school district doesn't know. And so I have some slides on that a little bit later. Let's see if I have here just.
Well, before you do that, let's go up to halftime, and then when we go into halftime, you can pull up your slides while we're thanking our sponsor. Right. But the gist of the article, and I just read it, it seems to me like the one that's getting a lot of attention is this bipolar ionization needlepoint stuff. And it looks like that was one of the ones that you looked at pretty closely in the article.
Yeah, I looked at, this is Global Plasma Solutions, and I wasn't like picking on them particularly, other than that they had the most data up on their website. And you kind of wonder, so, I kind of eat these things for lunch, right? I go onto the website and I download the data, and you wonder, like, why did they put that up there? Because their own data shows it doesn't do anything. And kind of interesting with Global Plasma Solutions, I drilled down into that in March of 2020, start of the pandemic, right? And then when I was doing some more work on this back in June or July, I noticed that all that data had gone from the website. But I said, that's okay, because I know about the Wayback Machine. The Wayback Machine backs up the whole internet. Like you can't run and hide.
You can't hide, but you put up their list forever. Huh?
Yeah, and so yeah, so they had a lot of data, and I used it as to illustrate what this whole class of devices. There's a lot of people that make these electrostatic gizmos that at best do nothing, but perhaps create like things that you don't want to breathe, like formaldehyde.
I got you. Now I've got a couple quick questions here. One is, what about these so-called NASA developed systems? And a lot of these guys rely on that. What's the thoughts on that, Bud?
Well, yeah, this is, the thing about the snake oil salesmen, the people that are selling these devices, they like to use the word NASA. They like to use the word quantum. They like the word nano.
Nano, yeah.
All these things, it's all window dressing. So if you could say NASA, that's great. But there was, somewhat of a study of notoriety on plants, that plants are air cleaners. And it was a, quote, NASA study, which, at least for some people gives you, a sense of that, hey, this must be pretty good. But yeah, it's just been appropriated a little bit.
Yeah, well, what I've seen is they'll take a study from NASA that, is a perfectly legitimate study, and then kind of misappropriate it to lend credence to whatever it is they're selling. And that happens quite a bit. The other question is, one of our listeners has been kind of inundated with pitches on these different products. And one of the things they'll say is at least they are available where proven equipment is oftentimes sold out. Have you run into that at all?
Not at all. There's so many excuses. There's a lot of politics involved around the schools. Teachers don't want to go back. I get it. It's, there's risk. And until there's zero risk, I think that a lot of teachers just don't want to go back. So a lot of school districts are just trying to do whatever they can to mitigate, and get teachers back. So it's tough.
Well, and I think too, You had that bipolar ionization unit in your article there, and what was the cost on that? $3,000 to $4,000 or something like that?
It's ridiculous. It's just a strip of like needles with a little power supply, right? Yeah, it's $3,000 to $4,000.
If you're comparing that to putting air cleaners in every classroom, it looks like a deal.
Yeah, but it doesn't do anything. Yeah, okay. But it's pretty, most of these, if we're talking just schools, and most of the classrooms don't have the big, system that's serving like 50 classrooms. A lot of them are rooftop units that might serve one classroom and stuff. So you'd have to be putting them in each one. But yeah, it's still the cost benefit. We can't talk about it because the benefit's zero.
So there's no cost benefit analysis to be done. Let's stop for a second. We're going to thank our sponsors. I got a couple more text questions, things that we wanted to talk about anyway. The hydroxyls, a little on the PCO technology. But before we do that, we want to thank our sponsors. We'll be back in 2 minutes with Bud Offermann.
Our marquee sponsor, Instascope. More jobs done faster with the future of IAQ assessment technology. Unlimited samples, instant results, and cloud-based data at instascope.co. Our association sponsors are AIHA, Healthy Workplaces, a Healthier World at AIHA.org. ACGIH, Advancing Careers of Professionals in Environmental Health, Industrial Hygiene, and Safety, interested in defining their science at acgih.org. The Cleaning Industry Research Institute, see more deeply through science and research at CIRIScience.org. The Indoor Air Quality Association, promoting the exchange of indoor environmental quality information through education and research at IAQA.org. The Restoration Industry Association, the granddaddy of the restoration industry, network with leaders at restorationindustry.org. The Institute for Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification at IICRC.org. And Healthy Buildings America 2021 in Honolulu, Hawaii, August 10 through 12, 2021 at hb2021-america.org. IAQ Radio industry sponsors are AEML Laboratories, free shipping, great pricing, same-day results with no rush fee at aemlinc.com. Particles Plus, feature-rich particle counters and air quality instrumentation. Count on us at particlesplus.com. Gray Wolf Sensing Solutions, over 20 years manufacturing accurate, reliable IAQ instrumentation for portable, short-term, and continuous monitoring at graywolfsensing.com. TSI Inc., an industry leader in precision instrumentation for monitoring indoor air. Learn how to expand your IAQ investigations at tsi.com. And Healthy Indoors Magazine, a free online magazine for industry professionals and consumers at healthyindoors.com.
All right, we're back for the second half of our interview. We've got Bud Offermann. Cliff, let me turn it over to you to start the second half. Then, Bud, if you want to, after this question or two, maybe go back to your slides, that would be great.
Hey, Bud, the reason that I queried you about this hydroxyl thing is that it comes up, and these machines like ozone are commonly used in the disaster restoration field. And I just like your comment on, using them in general. And then I guess in particular with COVID and with odors, like smoke and things like that.
Yeah, I looked at you sent me some links to some manufacturers of these devices. They were, Odorox was one of them.
Right.
Yeah, Yeah, I reached out to them and they didn't return my calls. But my name's out there right now, so I have to go into a pseudonym or something. But, yeah, so these are these devices don't look like, when I looked at them and everything, they do not look like they're there to be operated in occupied buildings. They're there for disaster cleanup efforts or whatever. Again, of course, my opinion is, for microbial cleanup, you really don't need any bells and whistles and magic chemicals and stuff like that. But yeah, I looked at it, and one of the things is the FDA moved quickly in I think March or April last year to fast track approval of medical devices and stuff for COVID-19, including air cleaners. And unfortunately, the requirement is simply to show a log-4 reduction so a 10,000-fold reduction of, let's say, the virus you're testing or whatever. Now, for an air cleaner, it doesn't say like, can you how long you test it to get that, is it a week, a day, 5 minutes, what size chamber? So it was kind of rushed in, and a lot of people are now doing tests that, for instance, on the GPS test, it has an ionizer bar that you put in an HVAC duct. They took the ionizer bar and put it over a Petri dish for like 30 minutes and then looked at how many bacteria and virus were killed. That has nothing to do with disinfecting, moving airstream, right? So, but they can show the $4 reduction, and guess what? They can say in their marketing literature, FDA approved. So, and some
It's sort of like the NASA stuff, but hey,
I just have a couple follow-ups if I can. Okay, but I think there are a couple questions on these hydroxyl machines in terms of, number one, where does this reaction occur? Does it occur only within the machine, or do these machines release hydroxyls into the air that then go out and hunt like a beagle for hunting rabbits or something like that? So is it in the machine? Does it go out? And then the second question is the use of moisture in conjunction with these hydroxyls. Does it make it better? Does it make it worse? Your opinion on the use of moisture with it.
I'm going to do my best to imitate Anthony Fauci.
Okay.
We just don't know. No, I mean, as far as the water, stuff. Okay. The hydroxyl radicals that are created by these electrostatic devices, most of them just go, are not contained in a reactor itself. They go out into the air, and they're very reactive. It's not something you want to breathe in. There's a recent paper out by her name is Wei Liu. She's with the Department of Building Science at School of Architecture in Beijing. Negative ions offset cardiorespiratory benefits of PM 2.5 reduction from residential use of negative ion air purifiers. So, all right. So even if we're just charging the particle and not creating hydroxyl radicals, like an ionizer, is like a dirty electronic precipitator, charges the particles and they just plate off on all the indoor surfaces, which includes your respiratory tract. Now, the hydroxyl radicals are very strong oxidants, and you don't want to be breathing them either. So at least we're seeing some studies now showing that you don't want to use these devices in occupied areas because of the potential toxic effects of adverse health effects related to the hydroxyl radicals and ions.
Cliff, do you have a follow-up?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, let me ask you this one because I got a bunch of text questions in here. First one is PCO, and I know that's something you've talked a little bit about. Is it really effective at destroying chemicals and killing microbiologicals? Is there any brand that you think would be effective without causing adverse effects?
Absolutely not. There is not.
Okay.
Here's the genesis of all this snake oil in my mind. The HEPA filters is a very mature technology. You can get a HEPA filter on Amazon for your home without bells and whistles for relatively inexpensive. It's a commodity. I mean, how do you distinguish yourself in the air cleaning business? Then out comes the bells and whistles. PCO, we've tested in our laboratory, PCO, other people have tested them. It has the, ideally, what you do is you oxidize VOCs or whatever down to water and carbon dioxide. Sounds pretty good, right?
Yes.
But that oxidation's never complete. And you often get rather benign VOCs like isoprene or terpenes being oxidized by these PCO devices and creating formaldehyde, which is, of course, a human carcinogen and a potent irritant. So again, I wouldn't want to invest in PCO technology right now, but it's out there.
I'm curious your thoughts on, there's a lot of people disinfecting, using electrostatic sprayers. Also now there's some thoughts that maybe theatrical smoke could help with reducing particulate in the air. Any thoughts on those two?
Yeah, well, again, you do such a good job with HEPA filtration and filtration and ventilation. I don't know why you'd be going down that road, but we've got to make a distinction between cleaning the air of airborne virus and bacteria and disinfecting surfaces. UV light, no problem with having a glove box where you're sterilizing your instruments and the instruments see, long duration of UV irradiation. That works. What doesn't work is going through the air, right? So, I mean, that's how I see it right now. It's technology that's wanting to be there, but isn't really there.
I got another quick one, Bud. Have you looked at any other bipolar ionization systems other than the GPS?
Yeah, I have.
Same issue?
Yeah. Do you remember the Causitron?
The what?
Causitron.
No.
No, it doesn't even sound like it's a legit thing, right? A Causitron. I mean, most of these things, like, you get a gist of it that they're not the real deal. But, that was a device, and we tested some of those devices in air handlers and airports and stuff like that. But I've looked and drilled down into other manufacturers' literature. They're pretty much all using the same labs, and they're doing these tests that don't really show any airborne removal or disinfection, just on surfaces. So
Okay.
make that distinction.
Let me get to a topic that I think is really important here and that I want to make sure we cover. How do you deal with wildfire smoke during the COVID-19? I mean, the ventilation thing seems to be, problematic when you've got a bunch of wildfires going on.
Yeah, that's a real challenge for people, especially where you have wildfire smoke, such as here in California. There's something up on our website which talks about that. And for your viewers, you can download off our website. But here's the thing. What you don't want to do is turn the outdoor air totally off. I'm going to stay with classrooms right now. You got a classroom, it's the pandemic, and I got wildfire smoke. Well, for wildfire smoke, we don't want to bring any outdoor air in at all or minimize it. And for pandemic, for COVID-19, we want to bring in a whole bunch. So what the suggestion we have here right now is that, one, do not just turn off all the outside air. Put it in minimum. If it has an economizer, put it in minimum. Use MERV 13 or better air filters. And I got to say this, is that some people are saying, I can't put a MERV 13 in my HVAC system. It's not designed for that high of a pressure drop. Well, that's a lot of BS. This is, again, a very mature, extended surface filters are a very mature industry. Pressure drops now are totally manageable, as long as you'd have, I would say, a 2-inch slot. You got a 2-inch slot or whatever, you can put in your MERV 13. And of course, portable air cleaners. There's also on our website is something called the building protection factor.
That's what I was just going to ask you about. Let's talk about that a minute.
So kind of like the Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Yeah.
Yeah. It will say, what's your building protection factor? And so if you're a building manager or operator and everything, this is something you want to know. It's not a hard calculation. It's on our website how to do it. But it basically is taking the metric that was developed for masks, the assigned protection factor, which is the concentration that's in the ambient air divided by the concentration you're inhaling through the mask. Well, building protection factor is simply the concentration outdoors divided by the concentration indoors. So if you've got MERV 13 filters, you can get a protection factor of almost 10, which is like an N95 mask. And if you have like MERV 4 filters or something, then you don't have so much. But the main thing I think with the wildfire management during COVID-19 is don't turn the outdoor air all the way off. Turn it down to a minimum, have good filters. And I think that's what best we can do.
But let me, this is a question that comes up. Obviously, as you said before, a filter doesn't work if the air doesn't go through the filter. What are some tips you would give school districts and other building owners to make sure that when they're upgrading to these MERV 13 filters, how do they ensure that as much air as possible is going through those filters?
Well, if they have an existing system, they're going to have a filter in there already. And so just choosing a MERV 13 filter that has a similar pressure drop. Fairly simple to look it up online, what the pressure drop is on their filters. But yeah, I'd want to emphasize this a few times here, right? Is upgrading your air filtration or increasing your outdoor air intake for COVID-19. These are good things to do, but they don't allow you to not wear a mask. They do not allow you to just have high density gatherings. You still have to have social distancing and masks to protect from short range face-to-face transmission. But they are very, very helpful in reducing the concentrations in indoor air for far field exposure, more than 6 feet away.
I guess the other thing I would ask is, are there ways of making sure the mechanical system is running longer so that you do get air through those filters?
Running longer. Well, as far as time goes, I mean, ideally, every HVAC system in schools or whatever would have a time clock, either built into the thermostat or whatever. You like to start the system before occupancy, and you'd like it to continue after occupancy.
Okay.
As far as like telling how much airflow is going through the device, that requires measurement, right? And but if you upgrade your filter to a MERV 13 or higher, and it has the same pressure drop as the existing filters you have, then you can feel comfortable that you've not decreased the airflow rate, which is some of the concerns people have when trying to upgrade.
And I guess one of the comments is to make sure that the filter rack and the door has proper gasketing so that you're making sure air goes through that filter as opposed to around it.
There is, if you go to the California Department of Health Services website, which is on that first slide, there are some resources there besides the paper. One that hopefully will be coming out soon is some practical things that school districts can do themselves without like having to have a specialized HVAC technician. It won't necessarily guarantee exactly the CFM of outside air coming in, but it'll tell you that one, the system's working, air is coming out of the diffusers, outdoor air is going in through the outdoor air intake, and yeah.
Okay, and there's some do-it-yourself filtration machines nowadays. You just buy yourself a nice little box fan and then attach a.
Oh, I got one myself.
You got one? All right.
Oh yeah, I've been building those. I like to have a fan on in the bedroom. I like cold air on my face. I like to be under the down comforter, and my wife has allergies, so I have to I put a filter on it. So I didn't do it for Wildfire or anything like that, but yeah. I saw an interesting one. Instead of just strapping a MERV 13 to the face of a box fan, they took 4 MERV 13 filters and then put the box fan on top. So it was like a little table almost or whatever.
Yep.
I thought that was pretty clever. But
very nice.
Yeah, you can make a pretty good air cleaner yourself with the box fan and filters.
Great tips, bud. Let's go to the roundup, John. All right, Cliff, let me turn it over to you. You got a final question for Bud?
Yeah, I do, Joe. I was watching television the other night, Bud, and I saw Robert De Niro and Jennifer Lopez. And I don't know if you saw that commercial, but they were introducing something called the Well Health Safety Rating. And I wondered whether you have ever heard of it. It's a safety rating and certification and so on and so forth. So
hard to keep up with all those rating systems, right? There's like a half a dozen or more. The Godfather was what? LEED, U.S. Green Building Council. And yeah, so Well's out there. It's one of them, but there are many others too. I never really understood why people did it to get the plaque on their wall, but they do, and it's a good thing. It's changed the building industry.
Hey, Bud, any idea what the cost is to upgrade from a 1-inch slot to a 2 or 4-inch slot?
I think a lot, like if your system has been built in the last 10 or 20 years, you probably have a 2-inch slot already. If you got an older system, it might not be that hard to expand the slot so it could take a 2-inch. You can get a 1-inch MERV 13, but it has like 3M filtrate charged media. And like we said with electrostatic precipitators, the advantage of the charged media diminishes pretty quickly as you get particles collected on it. So better to go to a 2-inch, or wider MERV 13 filter and without the charged media, just a regular glass media.
What about schools that have unit ventilators, Bud? It's a tough to get that MERV 13 into a unit ventilator. What do you recommend there?
Well, you can use. There's more of the ways. If you really can't put in a MERV 13 2-inch filter, and I would question that. I think you probably can. You just have to work at it. But if you can't, of course, you can always use portable air cleaners. Is one thing.
Okay, what does your crystal ball say about the future of air filtration technology, Bud?
Well, I don't. I continue to see the snake oil will be out there with us, but I think that the development of the high efficiency filters, pleated filters, has pretty much made this a very accessible commodity that it's useful. So I don't see a lot of development out there. What I do see is there's a lot of interest in putting sensors, integrating sensors with your air cleaners. So that's where they will sense that, there's a lot of particles in the air. Let's turn up the high speed. So I think that's what I'm seeing down the road a little bit more attention to sensor technology integration with the air cleaners.
I've got a question about upgrades to schools. There's going to be some stimulus money coming out. The schools are going to have some money to spend in upgrading their systems. What kind of obstacles or pitfalls would there be to using the money to do this? And how can school systems put out proper RFPs that get the results they actually want without avoiding waste or unnecessary work? I know that's a pretty
it's a
long question, but I figured I'd throw it at you here at the end.
in California, we've approved Assembly Bill 841, which I think it's like $2 billion going to schools. Much of that is 80%, I think, is slated for assessment, seeing what you got there. And then 20% at this time is for the repairs. So yeah, I agree that, and hopefully someone like maybe the California Department of Health Services or someone will come up with a nice roadmap, right? How do I get this money? Or there are some other organizations such as CASH and that are involved with schools that might help, put together that roadmap, because there is money to help things out.
Okay. Cliff, you have any other ones?
No, I think going back to the schools, to me, the simple solution is what you're doing in your house, bud. You get a box fan, you put the MERV 13 filter or filters on it, and it kind of solves the problem without trying to re-engineer something that wasn't properly engineered, when the school was built. Seems like that's the hard way to do it.
Yeah, well, I think that reducing the class sizes, social distancing, that's a must. Wearing masks, that's a must. And then I think there's, again, you just reiterated it, that it may be difficult to upgrade the air filtration to a MERV 13 in an existing school. And I think that largely that's not a non-issue. One of the things I'll mention, though, is that the controls in a lot of the classrooms that have an HVAC system, they've got the thermostat, just like you, Joe and Cliff, have in your home, that has a fan switch, right? It says fan on and fan auto. And the fan auto, the fan only comes on when it needs heating and cooling. So it's important that the fan switch be in the on position, so it's working all the time. But I do think you can get a MERV 13 filter in. Most all of your school systems can handle that.
But I got a text question. What are the risks of using ceiling fans in schools?
Well, yeah. So I've seen that was in either Yale or Harvard's thing about which direction the ceiling fan should blow, up or down. And, yeah, I think it's kind of a non-issue. I mean, it depends on where the infected person is. Ceiling fans, when they're blowing air down, the sphere of influence is just really under the blades. And further away, there isn't a lot of air movement. So I don't know what to say about, I'll do an Anthony Fauci. We don't really know, but I don't think that the ceiling fan, I'm really concerned which way it blows or if it's on or off.
Hey, real quick, any cautions with leaving the fan on in the on position as opposed to auto? I mean, is there things you have to watch for there?
No, it's just an energy saving issue. And let me say this, now's not the time to save energy. Okay? Not for the schools right now. Let's punt that down the field a little bit, but now's not the time. Now's the time to make our schools healthy and safe and get the kids back in school. We could do that with social distancing, masks, good air filtration and ventilation.
Bud, before we go, we always like to give you the last word. Any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to add?
Did I miss anything here? Well, let me just say that I think that some of these, the FDA, for instance, thing is being misappropriated and used in the marketing literature that, and that's not good. And also that people, when they do the ozone test, right? And it's an FDA requirement, also a Air Resources Board of California requirement. That's also being appropriated as we're FDA approved. That I don't make ozone, not that I'm, everything about the air cleaning. And finally, where the heck is the Federal Trade Commission? We're not talking about that the ream of paper was short and advertised it was 500. I mean, we're talking about giving people a false sense of assurance with these snake oil air cleaning devices. And we need some enforcement action. And I'm very hopeful with the new administration that the Federal Trade Commission will step up to the plate here and with some enforcement.
But I got one final comment, and that is that leaving the fan on in a hot, humid climate could possibly lead to condensation being pulled off the coil and causing mold in ductwork. Any thoughts on that?
No, I don't see that. We're not talking about leaving it on, 24/7. We're talking about leaving it on during the working hours. And, I don't believe that is a problem at all.
All right. Very good, Bud Offermann. Thank you. I've got so many great comments on the show already. We really appreciate you joining us and look forward to doing it again. This is our third, and look forward to number 4 down the road here.
All right.
Thanks again, Bud. This is Radio Joe Hughes saying thanks to this week's guest, Bud Offermann, to my engineer at the controls, John, you got to have faith, my co-host, the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick, most importantly, our growing group of loyal listeners and sponsors. We'll be back next Friday. Oh, by the way, next Friday we've got Bob Blockinger. We're gonna talk a little bit about surfaces, flooring and surfaces and hard surfaces, and so looking forward to a great show with Bob. We'll be back next Friday at noon with the next episode of IAQ Radio Plus.
For IAQ Radio, I'm Spike Rio saying thanks for listening.